No matter how distinct your value proposition is, it won't command a high price if you can't deliver that value proposition powerfully and persuasively at the point of sale. If you can't sell where the rubber meets the road, at the bargaining table. And your staff will continue to refuse to sell for you, and you won't have bargaining power unless we correct some of these underlying problems, which is putting the brakes on your sales force sales capacity. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Monarch and Moreau, and this channel is dedicated to funeral professionals who, although they don't have the lowest price, they wouldn't mind making the most money. Let's get into it. Imagine that your professional status is measured not just on the care you deliver, but on how well you can sell that care. And you have to deliver care and sell while constantly suppressing your own emotions. And when you do have sales success, you have to grapple with the fact that it literally came at someone else's demise. Now, when it comes to commercial selling, prove me wrong, but that is the most difficult selling environment to excel at in all of selling. Stakes are high here. This is the toughest sales job. We're talking about having the type of emotional intelligence where we can execute expert emotional labor and succeed even though it's coming at someone else's demise. And we have to care now for the person who is most bereaved by that demise. And it's the toughest job in sales, but this is where we have to differentiate ourselves. This is where we have to command our premium price. All things that we need to do are about to happen right here where the rubber meets the road at the point of sale, at the bargaining table. And if the grieving process is going to be safeguarded, if that conversation is going to take place at all, it's going to happen right here at the point of sale, at the bargaining table. Sales is a service. In fact, it's the major component of most services, and it's the only place where the grieving process can be protected through informed decision making. At the point of sale, at the bargaining table, that's where it either has to happen or it doesn't happen, or it's not safeguarded at all. The sales process is either one that informs, educates, or it's one that doesn't. If families make decisions when they're uninformed, it's likely that they could regret those decisions later on. Wouldn't the funeral professional who helps a family make an informed decision that prevents future regrets be worth a little bit more money than the one who doesn't do that? Do you see value in having an expert guide that walks you through the process, leading the way, making things easy for you so that you can prevent preventable mistakes and not have regrets in the future? But if we're not going to educate families, we're not going to safeguard the grieving process, we're just going to take an order and families aren't going to make informed decisions, then the likelihood of regret goes up. You don't buy insurance hoping that you're going to use the insurance. You buy the insurance for the peace of mind that it gives you. And you want to be ensured that the emotional labor that's going to be delivered as part of your service is of the highest quality. You don't want to compromise on that. You don't want to put that at risk. That's why you're willing to pay a little bit more. That small investment is going to be offset by the amount of worries you save. So our sales process, it's either one that's next level, high quality, or one that's transactional and low quality. We're just taking orders and our sales process is mediocre, and sales is a major component of service delivery, then our service is mediocre. Is that going to command a premium price? Can you morally reconcile a premium price with a mediocre service delivery without having some personal conflict that's going to take power away from you at the point of sale, at the bargaining table? And there's a number of reasons why this is going on. We talked about the dilemma at the crossroads of commercial interests and compassionate care. And you won't have bargaining power unless we correct some of these underlying problems, just putting the brakes on your sales force sales capacity. There's everything from identity crises being developed to symptoms like post-traumatic stress, because the division between what we're really feeling and then what we have to act and front for the sake of families and commercial interests creates a disconnect, creates disassociation, creates cognitive dissonance, which sometimes gives rise to identity crises and even imposter syndrome. And if we're struggling to reconcile the value behind our prices, and yet we're being asked to reach a sales quota, we might start to feel like we're taking advantage of vulnerable people when they really need our help. And that cognitive dissonance, that conflict is going to rob us of all of our persuasive force at the point of sale, at the bargaining table, and we're going to be paralyzed, hesitant, and apathetic instead. And if they're only going to buy a few services from you, don't the prices of those services then necessarily have to be high for you to make a profit? And if you don't make a profit, isn't it necessarily true that you'll be out of business? It's the toughest sales job in selling. If it's mediocre, the service is mediocre. If the chain holds 10,000 pounds, but one link holds 100 pounds, the chain holds 100 pounds. The salespeople have to be the highest skilled. But if it holds 10,000 pounds, it's worth more. So this is the toughest sales job and a big part of delivering service. It makes sense that you would charge more for that level of care, right? The higher the service quality based on the higher level of emotional labor, based on the higher level of emotional intelligence deployed. We're not talking about just taking an order where somebody is then underserved. Difference in service level qualities is going to be the emotional labor that we can execute. And we can only execute that if our emotional intelligence is high. So are we sitting down with our staff, and if we're staff or our managers sitting down with us and explaining that emotional labor is really the prime service differentiator and it's dependent upon emotional intelligence, which is really dependent upon emotional and physical fitness. If we're burnt out, we can't execute that top level emotional labor. But that top level emotional labor, when executed, is worth more because it prevents regrets. It safeguards the grieving process. So two things are going to happen when your staff know that those are the things that create the value behind the difference in price. That's what adds to the price. If your competitor has the low price and your price is a little bit more, our price is $2,395, and the price they told us that they were quoted somewhere else is $1,900. We've got a difference of $495. Emotional labor is really the prime service differentiator. That's what adds to the price. That's the difference. That expert emotional labor. And number two, when you realize what moves the needle, what is really the supply and demand, it's not just the raw numbers that this provider does 50 cases a month and this provider does 10 cases a month. Because one provider may sell $12,000 funeral packages and the other one does $500 direct cremation. The real difference in value is the amount of emotional intelligence or the quality of emotional labor that they can provide, not just sometimes, but all the time. Reliability. Because some days, if we're better than other days, then we're not reliable, are we? So we have to manage our emotional workload. And so when we know that that's what moves the needle, that's what commands the high price, but that's also what supports the value behind the price, now we're starting to align our goals, our actions, our feelings. We're starting to remove the conflict. We're starting to remove the brakes. The only place that can happen is going to be at the point of sale, at the bargaining table. That's where decisions are made, and they're either made with information or a lack thereof. But if we're run down from moral and ethical conflict and we can't reconcile commercial interests with our caregiving duty, then we're going to struggle to sell. The level of emotional intelligence that we can bring to bear in our sales process, maybe the major component of our service delivery, is going to be reduced. It's going to be diminished. It's going to be discounted on the open market. Because our agents at the bargaining table are not going to move with persuasive force. When we're struggling with moral conflict and ethical dilemmas and we can't reconcile what we're doing or what we're being asked to do with what our values are, then we start to get mental strain, burnout, and ultimately a retreat from the things that give us the most stress. And if we're having trouble selling, we're going to retreat into the caregiver role. We're going to become uber caregivers, and we're going to start to protect families from our own prices. They're going to be paralyzed with sales apathy. And sales apathy is one of the first signs of emotional fatigue and burnout. Emotional fatigue is going to begin to show up in reduced ability to be empathetic, to engage, and to connect meaningfully with family. Because if we're unsure about what we're selling, that's really a sign that we're starting to become less and less sure about what we're even doing. When we start to do that, we don't sell at premium prices. We start to discount even our basic price. And I just want to drive this point home. You have an obligation to be profitable. But funeral professional, rest assured, if you take care of yourself through self-care, if you prepare and train yourself to have high emotional intelligence, so you are providing expert level emotional labor, you are worth the difference in price every single time because you safeguard the grieving process by preventing preventable errors and future regrets. Now, the reason we have to be able to command premium prices, and it's not because I want to teach you how to price gouge people, but it's because delivering expert emotional labor takes next level emotional intelligence. Emotional labor is very difficult to produce and deliver. It comes with a heavy emotional toll. It's expensive for the caregiver to provide. Now, your ability to deliver high quality emotional labor is finite, and it's expensive for the provider to acquire. So if you sell at the lowest price, which is half the highest price, you sell at one half, you have to do twice the work. Every provider out there can't provide expert level emotional labor, and they can't do it all the time. Because if you charge half the price, that means you got to work twice as hard hard to make the same amount of money. But the expectation that we deliver twice the amount of emotional labor is just not realistic. We don't have an inexhaustible supply of emotional resources. Emotional resources are finite, and they're finite for everyone. And because it's super expensive for providers to find high quality emotional intelligence and then maintain it, not overwork it, and they can't do it all the time. So that goes to quality of care. It also goes to service reliability. It's another reason why one provider is worth the premium price and another provider is not. Probably the biggest service quality differentiator that there is in the business. If you try to work twice as hard as everyone else to make the same amount of money, it's going to happen. So something has to give, either the low price or the quality of care. Those are the facts. Those are the economics of the situation. And that's why lawyers communicate to us through their prices. We size up their expertise when we're shopping around. The $100 an hour lawyer versus the $800 per hour lawyer. Which one do you think that you want? If money is no option, who are you choosing? $800 or $100? So what's the difference in your mind? Why you want one or the other? It's the expectation that that price created. With the $800 an hour attorney, you're expecting a higher level of labor to be brought to bear on your problem. So in that example, we can see the value in expertise and the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're hiring the best expertise. The highest quality emotional intelligence producing the highest quality emotional labor. Done right, done every time the first time, so it's reliable. Because as you know, not everybody can be reliable. It's that distinct value that your competitors can't replicate. There's no substitute for it. It's the reason why you can command a high price at the bargaining table. Emotional labor is the most expensive service delivery that there is. If you deliver the emotional labor component of your service poorly, average, or exceptionally, that's going to affect to a great extent the experience, the family, more than anything else. The very thing that's pulling your sales force down is the reason why you have to charge more, because it takes more to sustain to that level of care. Let's take a time out. Let me ask you two things, owners, managers, funeral directors, right, whose income and paycheck is dependent to this to some extent, right? When the call comes in, we can sell at a competitive price. We could sell at a discount. We could upsell at a premium price, or we could just lose the sale. Isn't that right? And do you believe that we're somewhere in the spectrum from peak performance and high job satisfaction and then burnout on the other end of the spectrum, and our performance might be impacted on which side of the spectrum we're closer to? And that's why reliability is a service dimension that has real, tangible value. So just look at the logic. Sales in a direct cremation, families who just choose the basic service, which is why we need to charge higher prices. If there's only a few services, then we got to charge a lot for those services. But when they only choose a few services, we only have a few opportunities to engage, interact with them. And so the initial call, finalizing the details, that's going to be a major component part of the interactions. It's going to revolve around finalizing the details, the financial details, coming to an agreement on the final price, the sale, right? So your sales process is a huge component part to delivering world-class care. There's no way around that. If you're going to show up every day and leave your problems at the door so you can have the right attitude that's conducive to selling to bereaved families and providing care to the grieving, then you're going to need a high level of emotional intelligence. And how intelligent can you be if you're nearing burnout? So to provide this level of care is expensive. It's expensive for you, and it's the reason why you have to charge a premium price. The price reflects the value that's built in to the emotional labor and the emotional intelligence behind that labor, and selling in that environment is the hardest job in sales. And quality of care, service level, is dictated by the quality of emotional labor. And not everyone can deliver high quality emotional labor reliably. That's why one provider is worth more than another provider, because of quality and reliability. So that's the biggest reason why we have to command a premium price, because we want to deliver the best care. But it really becomes a catch-22, doesn't it, when you saddle those people with high sales quotas, high sales expectations that maybe they're not prepared for, and then they start to develop those moral conflicts because they don't know the value behind their price. They don't know how to talk about emotional labor or quantify it for prospects, referral partners. So they themselves really don't know the value, can't differentiate themselves. They're going to struggle then to sell at higher prices, even though they have to. So if you're going to deliver high quality funeral care, then it requires high quality emotional labor, and it requires high levels of emotional intelligence, which are expensive to produce and deliver. So if you're going to continue to deliver them, you're going to have to charge for them. There's no other way around it. The problem here is that when salespeople who are caregivers don't understand the value behind their prices, can't articulate it, don't have that inner wherewithal of self-sold, that's going to be a real problem if we're trying to sell at high prices and deliver high quality care. But if I can answer these questions right here and make the most important sale, the sale to myself, I can avoid all the problems that is holding me back, and I can release the brakes and have the breakthrough that I deserve in my professional career so that I can have that power at the bargaining table. Increasing your power at the bargaining table. Consider following us. We're going to be dropping one of these videos at least once per week.